due to competition from other communication technologies, including and probably mainly email. And arguably, of course, the telegram was never a mass communication technology at all. But let's look at the question of the survival of television as content, as opposed to the survival of the distribution medium or platform. By this, I mean to make a distinction between the technology of television, the distribution medium and the box, and the content, that form of entertainment or information made exclusively for television. I'm asking, in other words, whether content specifically made for television, like game shows, for example, will survive. In an unscientific way, I analyzed. When I say I analysed, of course I mean the research department analysed, but I'm the chief creative officer and therefore I did the analysis. In an unscientific way, I analysed a week of prime time in the UK during the period 1900 to 2300, 2330 in the case of ITV, across all terrestrial broadcasters. If we consider programmes created just for television, and exclude news and sport as being retransmission of existing material or common to other media, if we exclude dramas made for cinema or based on books, then of the 196 shows in this time period, 64% were purely television and 36% was not. You could say, by this analysis, that some of the stuff in prime time was not television, although it was distributed by television, and that in fact it represented older historical content forms surviving in a relatively new medium. This means that the content which is intrinsically television, like the game show for example, is likely to survive on emerging technologies. Certainly this is true for my own company, FremantleMedia, where our catalogue of game show formats and our reality shows have been reborn on the web and on mobile phones in reality and general consumption environments. So, if it is true that television as medium and form will survive, what other lessons can we learn from the history of mass communication technology which might help us understand where we are going? Well, for a start, no mass communication technology has ever been exploited in the way that the inventors predicted it would. In other words, the really good news I bring you today is that it's not just you and I who don't know what's going on. Nobody does. Not even, in fact, particularly not the technologists. When radio was introduced, it was marketed in kit form, sold to men as a kind of quasi-engineering hobby. It was only when families complained that men were spending too much time playing in the back room that the set migrated into the living room, and kits were replaced with ready-made radiograms by the manufacturers. When the telephone was originally introduced in the United States, it was believed that it would find its primary market amongst businessmen. In fact, so convinced were the cable operators, the network operators, that they tried to prevent any other use. When women in rural America discovered that they could use the telephone to communicate with their neighbors, the operating companies tried to stop them, this is true, through prohibitive legislation, until they realized, of course, that this represented a market that they had not thought of. SMS famously has a similar history. Introduced originally as a channel for communication between engineers, the first commercial short message was sent in 1992 from PC to mobile. Its triumph has been the triumph of the consumer, since it was barely promoted in the public domain until it was already widely used. It was originally presumed, therefore, by the inventors that it would remain an industry communication medium, not that it would become the symbol of a youth movement, a set of manners and a culture, a way of extracting revenue from television audiences, the source of a new language, a flirting medium, or a sexual technology. The users, the audience, have made it all of these things, not the technologists. It is possible to describe what's happening in the contemporary media by looking at the way communication devices have historically become personalized. Communication devices tend to follow the same pattern of domestication. They move from the public domain to the domestic, and then into the private sphere, and then they become intensely personalized. I'll give you an example.